So again, a feeling of gratitude for still being alive this week, so that we can again listen to teachings, knowing that there is no certainty in our lifespan, or no certainty in the time that we will die. But we made it another week. We have this moment. We have the conditions, outer and inner, to learn the Dharma and to take it in. And so let's really make our minds receptive, so that we make use of this opportunity. And to make it receptive by having a good motivation for listening to the teachings. So we're not here just to get a bunch of information, or to learn a bunch of stuff so that we can look like knowledgeable people and can pontificate to large groups of people in the chai shop. But we're here to, with a genuine spiritual quest and yearning that wants to find a way out of our present situation of confusion, and wants to help all others find that way out as well. And so we generate the aspiration for full awakening to benefit each and every single living being, no matter whether we like them or don't like them, agree with their ideas or don't agree with their ideas. Now, we want to work for the benefit of all of them, and to do this specifically by transforming our mind into the mind of a fully awakened Buddha. So spend a minute and make that your motivation for being here tonight. So it's important we keep coming back to that motivation again and again and again, because our mind is immersed in garbage again and again and again. Yeah? So it's not like an artificially generating bodhicitta is going to totally transform our mind once and for all. No, we are creatures of habit, so we have to keep on generating it again and again, you know, and in that way creating a new habit instead of the old habit of judgment and criticism again and again, or the old habit of conceit again and again, or the old habit of dismissing people again and again, or the old habit of jealousy, you know. So we have to really work at creating the antidotes to the afflictions in our mind and becoming familiar with them, so that our mind is actually transformed. So this takes time, and it takes repetition, you know. We would all like kind of some big sap, and like, now I got it. Well, it doesn't happen like that. Okay? We have to, you know, really work at it and transform the mind slowly. Okay? But it's this whole idea the more you train in the cause, the more energy you build up, behind your causal compassionate motivation. And so then the easier it is to have that motivation. So it really requires that repetition. Yeah. We're really suckers sometimes. Yeah? We really want that flash of lightning and, the Buddha to appear before our eyes and say, now you're a bodhisattva. Because we read about in the Mahayana scriptures these bodhisattvas getting predictions of their enlightenment. And, why shouldn't I get one too? And, okay, Amitabha, I'm waiting for my prediction. When's it coming? Yeah. So, we often approach things really from the wrong perspective. Okay, so here we are on verse 266 of the 400 stanzas, still in the chapter refuting permanent time and truly existent time. The time has been very slow going through this chapter. Yeah. So let's see maybe if we can get through the rest of the chapter tonight. Okay, so the next verse 266, is about refuting the truly existent present. Okay, so remember, the present is that which has arisen but has not yet ceased. Okay, so the verse says, the transformation of things also is not perceived even by the mind. Those who lack wisdom nevertheless think that the present exists. We go, well, the present does exist, but he means truly exist. So exist and truly exist are two different things. Yeah, existing just means conventional existence. The causes and conditions have come together, something arises, it's impermanent, it's transient. True existence means that something has its own essence that makes it what it is, that it exists in and of itself, under its own power. Okay, so truly existent things don't exist at all, but conventionally existent things do exist. Our problem is we can't tell the difference between, we apprehending truly existent things and the appearance of conventional things. They're so blended in our mind that we can't tell the difference. And so we think how everything's appeared to us is actually the way they exist. But they don't exist that way. So this verse in particular is refuting the Samkhya, which was an ancient Indian philosophical tradition. And they believe that there's something called the prakriti, or the principle, which is some permanent substance out of which everything is created and everything dissolves back. Okay? Kind of like nowadays people talk about, some cosmic energy. Yeah, unifying cosmic energy, and everything appears out of it and then dissolves back into it. So a little bit like that. Okay, so the Samkhya are saying, okay, you just got done refuting substantially existent past and future. Okay, but the present really exists. Okay, the present truly exists. Thus, if the present truly exists, the future must also truly exist, because the principle, this substance, cosmic substance, gives up its nature of being in the futurity of, being a future object, and assumes the state of the present object. So this is also the school that says that the results of something exist in the cause, except in an unmanifest form. Yeah, so the sprout exists in the seed, but you just can't see the sprout yet. Okay. So what they're basically saying here is that a truly existent future principle or future object becomes a truly existent present object. Okay. And our refutation is that the principle is matter and is permanent by nature. So how is something that is permanent going to undergo temporary change and produce new things? Okay? So it's kind of a little bit about this idea of like God. There's a permanent God who is an absolute, who doesn't change, and yet produces the world and the beings in it. And we say, well, that's impossible, because something that is permanent cannot change, and change is required when you create something new. Okay? So Aryadeva says there's no mental consciousness, not even one perceiving very subtle phenomena that perceives the principle transforming into a present object. Okay, let alone seeing sense conscious, there's no sense consciousnesses that sees this happening either. So, although the transformation of the principle into the present is not observed by any consciousness whatsoever, meaning that it's not existent, okay, those who lack wisdom about the meaning of suchness or emptiness consider the present truly existent. Okay, so saying, well, those Samkhyas, they don't get it. Okay? But you have to really think about this. I mean, on some level, we look at the Samkhya thing and say, who would believe in that? But then on another level, this idea of like one cosmic unifying substance in which everything already exists but hasn't manifest. Yeah, and so then it manifests for a while, and then it dissolves back into this permanent, unifying cosmic substance. It sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? Yeah? So we shouldn't, just dismiss these schools, because there's part of our mind that says, yeah, I like that. Yeah? But, because when you study Madhyamaka philosophy, you're always trying to grasp onto something. And everything you try and grasp onto, cut, refute, And we're like, but, I don't want to be falling through empty space. I want to clutch onto something. I want to clutch onto some kind of reality somewhere. Yeah? And Madhyamaka says, well, you can clutch all you want, but try and find the thing you're clutching to and see if you can find it anywhere, if it exists. And when we search, we can't find it. Okay, verse 269. So now we're going to go into a whole bunch of verses, actually through verse 274. That's all refuting again, the substantially existent time, but refuting the existence of substantially existent functioning things as a basis for time, and specifically refuting, examining whether functioning things have duration or not. Okay? Because we usually say things endure, don't they? Yeah? I mean, this table endures. Isn't this the same table that was here last week? And when we had the Four Noble Truth course, wasn't this the same table? Yeah, and the same clock, and the same bell, and the same cup, and many of the same people. Wasn't it? All the same? Yeah, kind of seems that way, doesn't it? Okay, so we think of that things endure, and that there's some characteristic or quality of endurance that exists from its own side. There's this idea of like, okay, things arise, then they endure for a while without changing, and then they cease. Yeah, do you have that idea? Is that how you kind of, look at things? Okay, a person's born, then they kind of remain the same, meaning whatever age they are at the moment, like you were born yesterday, but you were born, 30, 40 years ago, but you came out of the womb looking like you look now, and you remain the same all that time, even until you're 96, and then you die. Yeah, when we think of people being very steady and constant, don't we? Yeah, when we think of people, we don't look at somebody. Kind of look around at the people in the group right now and try and imagine what they look like as babies. Yeah? Do you ever look at the people around you and think, what did they look like as babies? Yeah? Or, what are they going to look like? Let's say, we all make it into our 90s. What are we going to look like? Do you ever look at the people around you? What are they going to look like when they're kind of 90-something? Yeah? It's very difficult for us to imagine, isn't it? Because there's this feeling that however we see them now, they're just enduring like that. They're just going to, they've been that way since they were maybe 16. Okay, the early years they change. But from 16 until 86, they don't change. Yeah? Until we look at the pictures. And then we wonder what happened. Okay, so there's this feeling of like truly existent duration, some permanent aspect that things have. Okay. So Joe, so the verse says, how can there be things with no duration? Being impermanent, how can they not endure? If they had duration first, they would not grow old in the end. Okay, so Joe Blow, our friend here, says time exists because functioning phenomena that acts as the basis for imputing time exist. In other words, the package of tissues acts as a basis for us talking about time. It existed 5 minutes ago, it exists now, it'll exist in another 5 minutes. You can't talk about time without kind of referring to things that exist in time. Okay, so that's what they're talking, Joe Blow's saying. So since time can be examined and known by looking at functional phenomena, but not on its own, time is truly existent because these functioning things are truly existent. Okay, so says Joe Blow. So the Madhyamakas, Aryadeva, Gyaltsabje, reply, but functioning phenomena, the cup, the telephone, the recorder, the tissues, the clock, you and me, which are the basis of time, can't be truly existent. That's because they don't have inherent duration, because they're continually changing. So when we talk about duration, we're talking about inherent duration. Yeah, some permanent, enduring enduring quality that people have. And we're saying, actually, such kind of duration cannot exist. Why? Because things are changing moment by moment by moment. They're rising, abiding, and ceasing all at the same time. Okay? If they had inherent duration, they arose and then they endured without changing, then they could not age. Because things that had the quality of inherent endurance or inherent duration cannot cease. They always remain the same. Okay? And they can't be affected by any other quality or any other factors. Okay? So how can there be things with no duration? We feel like there's things, so they have to have duration. How can you have things with no duration? Yeah, that's what we're saying. But being impermanent, how can they endure? But all these things are under the influence of causes and conditions. So they're changing momentarily. So how can they endure without changing from one moment to the next? They can't. Okay? If they had duration first, if when things arose they had the quality of duration, then they could not grow old in the end. So something that has the quality of being permanent or enduring without changing cannot suddenly have its nature transform into being impermanent. Okay? So that's what it's getting at. Yeah, think about it. Can something have endurance and then become impermanent later on? If it could, what would make it go from being unchanging to being changing? What would have to affect it to make it go from being unchanging to being impermanent and changing? Can you think of something that would make that happen? Okay, verse 268. Just as a single consciousness cannot apprehend two objects, here it means, I'll explain it. Cannot apprehend two objects. Similarly, two consciousnesses cannot apprehend one object. Okay, so here we're still talking about why duration isn't inherently existent. Okay, so we're saying that there's no inherent duration because just as one moment of consciousness cannot apprehend two consecutive objects. Okay? So one moment of eye consciousness or ear consciousness, whatever, that moment of consciousness cannot apprehend one moment of the object plus the next moment of the object. Why not? What?
The moment and the object come together at the same time.
So why can't one moment, perceive this moment of an object and the next moment of the object?
Both are ceasing. Both are arising and ceasing.
Yeah, because the consciousness is impermanent.
So is the object.
Yeah. But we're taking that for granted, but the consciousness is impermanent, okay? So, okay, and two consecutive moments of consciousness, this moment and the next moment of consciousness, cannot apprehend a single object at the same time. Why? Because the object doesn't exist in the very next moment. The object is impermanent. Okay, so both the object and the consciousness are undergoing a momentary disintegration. So Joblo says, but that contradicts the Abbey Dharma that says that the five objects, visual form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, are each apprehended by two kinds of consciousness. Okay, so then the Madhyamakas respond, okay, but if you don't accept momentary disintegration, you aren't a Buddhist. Why? Because the four seals, the four seals that delineate the philosophy that is Buddhist philosophy starts out with all conditioned things are impermanent. So, the Madhyamakas are saying, well, if you're saying that things are permanent, then you better check up because maybe you're not really a Buddhist. Okay. So, if you accept momentary disintegration, then the observed object of a visual consciousness cannot act as the object for the subsequent moment of consciousness because that object has changed and the consciousness has also changed. Okay, so what this Abhidharma passage means that Joe Blow is quoting here, it means that the visual consciousness, as one kind of mind, cognizes the form clearly, and that the object appears clearly to the sense consciousness. It's not mediated by any kind of conceptual image. But the mental consciousness that cognizes it the object after the visual consciousness is, there the cognition is mediated by this conceptual image. So it knows the object in an unclear way. So we talked about that when we studied Lorig, that conceptual consciousnesses don't see objects the same way direct perception does. And they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Okay? Advantage of directly knowing is that there's no mediation. You know the thing as it is. The disadvantage is that you can't have any access to ideas if there's only sense direct perception. At our level, we need conceptual minds. Of course, we eventually want to go beyond them, but right at our own level, we need them because otherwise, you couldn't even have listening to teachings. Because if you didn't have conceptual minds, there would just be the sounds of the voice, but you wouldn't understand any meaning from them. Okay? Okay, so that's what that verse meant. Okay, verse 269. Okay, so again, examining whether or not time has duration. So Aryadeva says, if time has duration, duration is not time. If it has not, then without duration, there would also be no end, because things would endure forever. Okay, so Joe Blow says duration exists inherently because of being the characteristics of present time. Okay, that's what Joe Blow is saying. So we say, okay, time and duration, are they different things or are they the same thing? Okay, so they're different. Then if they had an inherently existent relationship, then one must be the base and the other must be that which is based upon that. Okay? So if duration relies on time as something separate, so there's time and duration relies on the time, and they're different natures inherently, then duration would not be time because they would be mutually exclusive. They would be two separate objects, unrelated. Okay? So in that case, time wouldn't have duration. Okay? If there's inherent existence. If time does not have duration, then there can't be disintegration at the end of the duration. Okay? So since time doesn't have inherent duration, inherent duration cannot be a characteristic of the present. In other words, the present can't inherently endure. The present is dependent. Okay? It's kind of interesting to think about, what's the relationship between time and duration? Are they the same thing? Are they different things? How do they relate to each other? If they're inherently existent, they can't have any kind of dependent relationship. They have to be two separate identifiable things so that you can have time here and duration here, and never the twain will meet. Okay. Verse 70 is interesting too. How about impermanence and functional things? Or things, things meaning conditioned things. If impermanence and things are separate, things are not impermanent. If one, since things are precisely that which is impermanent, if one, meaning if the two things are one, since things are precisely that which is impermanent, how can they have duration? Okay, so we're talking about, are things and impermanence one or different? So Joe Blow says, duration exists because there are permanent things that have duration. Oh no, I'm sorry, because there's impermanent things that have duration. So duration's got to exist. So then we ask, okay, what's the relationship between impermanence and duration? And if they're inherently existent, are they identical? Or are they unrelated? Because if two things are inherently existent, that's the only way they can relate. They've got to be either totally identical, or they've got to be totally unrelated to each other. Okay? So if impermanence and functional thing are inherently different in nature, then things like the cup and the bell and you and me would not be impermanent. Because you could have things and they would be inherently different than impermanent. So then those things would be permanent. The cup would be permanent, the paper clip would be permanent, you and me would be impermanent. I would be permanent, I'm sorry. Are all those things permanent, unchanging? No. Okay? So you can't say that, it doesn't work to say that impermanence and functioning things are inherently different. Okay? If things and impermanence are one nature inherently, they also couldn't have duration, because that which is impermanent is a functioning thing. So impermanence and functioning thing would be inherently one and the same. So you couldn't have thing possessing impermanence, because for one thing to possess another, they have to be separate. Okay? So impermanence, impermanent and functioning thing, they're synonymous. Okay? They're synonymous. But they aren't inherently the same. Yeah? They're dependently synonymous. We can say things have duration, but when we say things have duration, it doesn't mean they're permanent. When we're speaking in conventional language, saying something has duration just means that one moment looks similar to the previous moment. Okay? So this whole thing is like all the time when we negate inherent existence, when we say if things inherently existed, they would have to be either exactly identical or totally unrelated. Whereas if things are not inherently existent, that you don't have that same, they have to be either totally one and identical or totally separate, because they can be dependent on each other instead. Okay? Okay, verse 271. Okay, so here it's talking about the strength, this next verse, the strength of duration versus the strength of impermanence. So if duration and impermanence are two different things. Yeah, which it sounds really strange to think of duration and impermanence as unrelated to each other. Yeah, doesn't it? I mean, because for something to endure, it has to arise and it has to cease, and that duration is also changing moment by moment. You know, it's just a general label of duration because, you know, two things that are not exactly, two moments of something that are not exactly the same have some resemblance. Okay, so if duration is not weak because impermanence is weak, why should a reversal afterwards be seen? Okay, so what this means, so here we have Joe Blow again. He says, while things continue to exist, in other words, while things continue to exist, yeah, then duration is stronger and impermanence is weaker. Okay? Because duration is stronger, so they continue to exist. And he's thinking impermanence just means something goes out of existence at the end. Okay? But the weak can overcome the strong. In other words, impermanence, which was weak while things were enduring, can become stronger than duration, so that that object won't always endure. Okay, so Joe Blow's thinking, okay, here's duration, which is strong, steady, unchanging, and impermanence is there, but it's somehow weak. But somehow impermanence can become stronger and make duration go down in strength so that the object can cease. Okay? So, you know, a person's born, then they're enduring for a while. So duration is kind of there, but, you know, we don't see it too. I mean, impermanence is kind of there, but under the surface. Meanwhile, the person's just enduring. And then impermanence comes up and gets stronger, and wham, the person dies. Yeah?
That's how it is.
Yeah. So, but in actual fact, we're dying beginning with the moment after conception in the womb. Dying starts the moment after conception. Okay. We call it enduring because there's like, there's not gross impermanence right away. But it's not like things are going along unchanged. Every single moment there's change. Because if you didn't have every single moment of change, how would you go from being an embryo to being an old person? It happens gradually, doesn't it? So does it happen like, okay, you're conceived, and then you endure unchanged for a while, and then suddenly you become an infant, and you stay as an infant unchanging for a while, And then, bang, you become a toddler. And then stay as a toddler, endure unchanging for a while. And then, bam, again, you become a child. Yeah. And then you stay as a child, permanent. And then, they become a teenager. Now you've really had it. Yeah. Just you wait, Ryder. Cora and Sage are gonna get you. Okay. So, that's kind of how we look at things, isn't it? Yeah. You have kids too. They kind of, yeah. You think you have kids? You're not sure? Are they permanent or impermanent?
They're in England now, so they're permanent here now.
Okay. So, So then the Madhyamikas say, how can something like duration be strong and then become weak when they finally become impermanent? Okay, that's the thing, How can you endure for a while, and duration's being strong at that point, and then all of a sudden, bang, something becomes impermanent and you cease, That doesn't work that way. If duration isn't weaker, in other words, if duration is stronger, because impermanence is weaker while things continue to exist, then nothing could harm duration's inherent strength. Okay? So if duration was stronger and impermanence weaker, what is going to harm the strength of duration and make something cease? Yeah. Okay. So, and then it says, why should a reversal afterwards be seen? In other words, why should things later become impermanent? What would make them impermanent if at the beginning they had this permanent duration? Okay. So this is kind of challenging. We've talked about this before, how sometimes we think of ourselves like we think of there's a soul, that is overarchingly permanent and unchanging, but parts of it change at different times. Yeah? So we look at things like that, but it's totally illogical. Something can't be both unchanging and changing at the same time. Impossible. Okay. If impermanence, verse 272, if impermanence is not weaker and is present in all things, none of them would have duration, or not all of them are impermanent. Okay? So, if impermanence is not weaker, in other words, if impermanence is stronger, and it's present in all things, and if, impermanence and all these things are inherently existent, then none of them would have duration. Yeah, because remember, duration, inherent existent duration, doesn't change at all. So if things were impermanent, none of them could have duration. Or either that, or you would be forced to say, not all things are impermanent, and some things are permanent. Yeah, but that doesn't make sense, because thing, or functional thing, is synonymous with impermanent. Because things are that which are produced by causes and conditions, and that's what is impermanent too. Okay? So if impermanence is not weaker, and yet is present in all things, then none of those things would have duration. Yeah, some kind of inherent duration. Or if they did have some kind of inherent duration, then not all those things would be impermanent. They would have to be permanent. But you never say functioning things are permanent. Yeah. Then 273. Okay. If there is always impermanence, there cannot always be duration. Okay, because if they're inherently existent, they're contradictory. Okay? Or else that which was permanent later becomes impermanent. So this is kind of the same thing. So if there is always impermanence, there cannot always be duration. Okay, because those two things in an inherent existence cannot exist at the same time. Okay, or else that which was permanent later becomes impermanent. Okay? So the question here is, does impermanence arise together with the products it characterizes, or does it arise later? Does impermanence arise together with the products that it characterizes, or does it arise later? In other words, when the cup is produced, does the characteristic of impermanence arise at the same time as the cup? Is the cup impermanent from the moment it came into existence? Or did the cup arise and was it permanent, and then impermanence becomes a quality of the cup later on? No, it's part of the nature of the cup, isn't it? Okay. But if it arises at the same time, because that which is characterized, like the cup, and that which characterizes it, such as impermanent, because they're concomitant, yeah, then duration can't be inherently existent. Okay? Because things would, yeah, duration can't be inherently existent. That much characters and impermanence are concomitant. Yeah, okay. So if the cup and its impermanence arise at the same time, since they arise at the same time and impermanence is the nature of the cup, then duration cannot be inherently existent. Yeah, so the duration of the cup, it's not inherently existent, which means the cup, and if it were, the cup would have to be permanent. So duration, what it's getting at, duration is something that exists by being merely labeled. It's not an intrinsic quality of something that exists independent of it, but duration is merely labeled when there's two consecutive moments of something that seem similar to our gross senses. Okay, that's what we call duration, but it's actually impermanence. Yeah. Okay. So if a product like the cup were initially permanent because it had duration, and then later became impermanent and disintegrated and broke, if it remained for a second moment, it would be permanent because duration is permanent. Okay? But something can't be both permanent and impermanent. Okay? 274. We might actually make it today. 274. So this verse is refuting that both duration and impermanence exist together inherently. So if things have duration and impermanence together, okay, and remember we're talking about inherently existent duration here, then either it is wrong that things are impermanent, or duration is a fallacy. In other words, you can't have an inherently existent duration and impermanence be the character or the nature of a single object at the same time, because those two traits are contradictory. Okay? So the characteristics of products, all the different characteristics of a product, such as the cup or the paper clip or whatever, they're concomitant with each other. They exist at the same time. If you say that the duration of a thing's existence and the impermanence of its existence are simultaneously of one nature with this thing, so the cup is both simultaneously enduring, having inherent duration, and is impermanent, then either one, you can't say that things are impermanent, because that would contradict them having duration, okay? Or inherently existent duration is a fallacy. Guess which is the right answer? Okay, so these two, impermanence and duration, cannot exist together can exist together in false products, which don't exist as they appear. So impermanence and duration can both be the nature of something that is a false object that doesn't exist as in the way it appears. And remember that things that exist, conventionally existent things, don't exist the way they appear. Why not? How do they appear? They appear inherently existent. So their appearance is false. They don't exist the way they appear. Okay? So impermanence and duration, when both of them are just conventional qualities, not inherent qualities, they can exist together in a product, like the cup, that doesn't exist as it appears, because the cup looks like it has inherent duration. Okay, does it have inherent duration? No. Does it have conventional duration? Yes. Is it impermanent? Yes. Can conventional duration and impermanence both be characteristics of one object at the same time? Yes. Can inherent duration and impermanence both be characteristics of one object at the same time? No. Okay. And then 275. Okay. So this verse is refuting the proof of inherent existent time based on memory of the past. So the verse says, things seen do not reappear, nor does awareness arise again. Okay. Thus, memory is in fact deceived with regard to a deceptive object. Okay, so Joe Blow, our friend Joe Blow, comes along and says time exists inherently because there is past time that depends on past products. Product is a thing that was produced by causes and conditions. If not, it would be impossible to remember past lives. Okay, so time exists because there is past time that depends on the things that existed in the past. And if that weren't so, then it would be impossible to remember previous lives, past lives. Okay. the Madhyamikas say that this doesn't prove that time is truly existent. Because they say memory focuses on an object that we have experienced. Though the things we saw in the past and the mind observing those things in the past, do not occur again, memory arises with the sense of seeing as you see present objects. So when you're remembering something, do you have the kind of feeling like you're seeing it again, like you're seeing a present object? Yeah, you do, don't you? Okay. So memory, which is mistaken and deceived because you're not really seeing that past object again in the present. Okay, so memory is deceived. Memory arises in relationship to the remembered object, which is false, like an optical illusion. And it's false because it's not a present object, even though it's kind of appearing to our conceptual mind of memory as if it were a present object. Okay? However, memory does arise dependently. So it's interesting, you know how when we meditate, we can think of something that happened in the past, maybe something fantastic that happened in the past, or maybe something really awful that happened in the past, and when we remember it, we can get totally involved in it in our meditation so that it seems like it's happening again. Can't we? You had a fight with somebody and you relive it and you get angry like it's happening again right now. Or you had a great time with somebody and you relive it and you get really happy as if it's happening again now. Okay? So that mind of memory is mistaken with respect to the appearing object. Because that appearing object is appearing kind of as if it's a present object. Yeah. We're not actually apprehending it as if it's a present object, but we're deceived by that appearance. Okay? So if the previously experienced object that memory focuses on inherently existed, so I'm thinking of, the prom I went to in high school, however many eons ago that was, okay? Yeah, back with the dinosaurs. Okay, if previously experienced object that memory focuses on inherently existed, my date for that prom, if he inherently existed, okay, it should exist at the time of remembering it. So that same guy should exist now. Okay? In that case, it wouldn't be deceptive because my memory would be a direct perceiver. I would be seeing, that person directly. And he would exist the way he appears. I think if I saw him now, I probably wouldn't recognize him. He's probably, I guess, I don't know if he's even alive actually, gray hair, wrinkles, pot belly, I probably wouldn't look at him. My dad told me once that he went to my mom's high school reunion with her, and they had pictures of like all the people in the class, of what they looked like in the class, and then they were all meeting each other there. Dad said he couldn't put the people together with the pictures. They looked so totally different. Yeah? Okay. So the remembering consciousness would not be mistaken or deceived because it would experience the object exactly as it is. So I would be perceiving my date exactly as he was, back then with the dinosaurs. Okay? However, the previous object isn't observable at the time it's remembered. Why? Because it already arose and already ceases. It's a past object. It's gone. Okay? So that mind of memory is mistaken with respect to the appearing object, because it's seeing it as something that is existing now, and also because that's a conceptual mind. Yeah? Thinking of the person, it's not the real person. So the object is therefore false and the consciousness deceived. So this is actually very good for us to remember in terms of our life, that when we remember things in the past, the object, the appearing object, is false, and our mind that feels like it's still happening now is deceived. Okay? That would, if we could remember that all the time, wow, would we change? Yeah? Because then we would never ruminate about the past. We would never sit and go over something in the past again and again and again, either thinking it was so wonderful, I miss it, I want to have that experience again, or thinking, it was so awful, I was traumatized and I'm still being traumatized. There would be none of that. And imagine how much mental energy we would have at our disposal to cultivate love, compassion, and wisdom if we weren't so stuck in the past. Yeah, that would be quite something, wouldn't it? Yeah.
There would be no retaliation because the person hit you 2 minutes ago. That was in the past.
Right. Yeah, there would be no mind wishing to retaliate. Yeah, you would be free of the mind of revenge. Yeah. There would be no PTSD. Yeah. No PTSD at all. Yeah. You can still, I'm sure, highly realized beings, still, they can think of the past, but they recognize that it's a false object and the consciousness is deceived, so they don't get hooked by generating a lot of emotions towards things that are not existing in the present moment. Yeah, you can remember that, but you wouldn't have all this emotional thing arise, because you would realize what I'm remembering is not the actual person. It's just an image in my mind. Okay?
But can't reviewing the past and reflecting it, like I think about how we're asked to think about our triggers, spiritual triggers, can it help us understand ourselves better?
Sure. Did I say that memory was useless? No, I didn't say memory was useless. Okay? I was saying, if we don't know how to look at memory correctly, then we get all tangled up with our memories. If we know how to relate to memory correctly, then we can look at things in the past and learn a lot from them. Okay? Yeah, we would definitely learn more, because we wouldn't be sitting there ruminating, entrapped by all of our emotions, because you know how it is. Yeah, I mean, think of something pleasant that happened to you before and how your mind gets stuck in daydreaming about that and reliving it again and again and again. Yeah? Or think of something awful that happened in the past and how the mind gets stuck in that, reliving it again and again and again. Yeah. So these emotions that we get stuck with just, waste so much mental energy. Mm-hmm.
That would mean the thing we remember not the mind that remembers is not the mind that different moment mind and how we remember things is not really how they happen.
Yes, very true. That the mind of remembering is not experiencing the thing in the same way that we experienced it in the past. Because memory is a conceptual mind, so it is picking and choosing certain data and putting it together to make an image. Yeah? And so we can construct anything we want. And we do.
We do that with our experience.
Yeah.
With our memory, we do that differently when we get it at the moment we experience.
Say that again?
We do that when we experience it. We pick and choose how we feel.
Yeah.
Remember it, we can choose to eat it differently.
Yeah, that's true. At the actual moment we're experiencing it, we're not even aware of all of our the sense data that's coming in.
Well, John Meinhofer is the thing who really resonates with your dad's experience because he just went for his third year of doing it and saw the change. And he said, people remember the most unbelievable things that cause so much emotional turmoil. It's kind of crazy. They will bring things up that happened 30 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. That's what happens, doesn't it? Do you remember when we were juniors in high school and you said this and that to me and I cried for 3 days after it? And the person goes, no, I don't remember. Yeah, then they're going to cry for 3 more days in the present. Uh-huh.
So when we're talking about duration and impermanence,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the examples that we use to talk about impermanence is like, well, this moment of consciousness and some object, this moment. And then I think my tendency is to want to be like, oh, but there are moments, and then it's a duration
Yes.
of one moment or something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
I think maybe it's important to just recognize, like, those are also things.
Impermanent, exactly. Yeah, that very often when we talk about moments, we think of discrete, inherently existent moments. Yeah. But that's ridiculous, because each moment has a beginning, middle, and end. And each beginning has a beginning, middle, and end, and each middle has a beginning, middle, and end, and each end has a beginning, middle, and end. And you keep going like this. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Most people in the past, I think the future too can get just as attached emotionally to the visions of the future of yourself. But then you also have the problem where, like, you think, oh, like today I'm going to start a diet and tomorrow I want to do the diet again. But you don't actually know what yourself tomorrow will want. Like yourself tomorrow might want something else.
Yeah, yes, we change our mind a lot. Yeah. Yeah, so we it's true, we also go way into the future, I'm going to do this in the future. Yeah, I mean, we can see it. We say today, like you probably hear, in the Exploring Monastic Life course, then some of you are saying, oh, today, yes, I want to ordain in the future. Then tomorrow, no, I don't think ordination's for me. Then the day after that, I don't know, ordination's kind of interesting. Maybe I should consider it. Then the day after that, no interest. Right? Yeah? Is that happening? It's normal. You're normal. Don't think, don't get wrapped up with that. Okay. So, so we finished the chapter except for the summarizing verse. So we'll leave it, we'll just review the summarizing verse next week. And then we'll go on to the next chapter, which is refuting wrong views. Refuting the true existence of that which is viewed. And this chapter is a little bit, dare I say, easier than I don't want to, give you false hopes than the previous chapter. Okay.
We worked with myself together with a therapist, right? A psychotherapist. And did you mention the philosophical point of view of impermanence and talking to the existent regard, for example, to post-traumatic experiences how people react?
Mm-hmm.
You had a conversation with him about that. Does he share some philosophical point of views, and does he see an option for patients to, besides the therapy, to adapt these views?
I haven't discussed this with the therapist. It would be interesting to.
Yeah, since he is a Buddhist, I thought. Since he says he is a
Oh, you're thinking about Russell? No, I haven't discussed it with Russell. Yeah. But it also depends on the mind of the client too, because this could be very true, but if the client doesn't really understand it well, then it may not be helpful. And
Some of my experience around that is the power of working with past stuff is to uncover how skewed you're holding it. That's the thing that's powerfully healing. That, the common one is that something bad happened to you and you believe that you caused it, especially when you're young. So to uncover that and get clear about, no, there were all these things that came into being that created this.
Okay, so you're saying that in a therapeutic situation, actually what Brian was saying before, seeing how skewed your memory is what actually promotes the healing. Yeah.
This may have gotten covered in previous teachings. I apologize. But the idea of duration. And we made a statement at one point in the teaching today about how duration is a mere designation.
Duration is designated in dependence upon two moments, consecutive moments that have a similarity.
You're saying, though that is duration, those two moments that appear, that is appearing permanent, is duration.
No, they appear similar.
Okay, similar.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is, why was duration used as a vehicle for logical substantiation of fixed existence? Is it because it supports this is fixed reality and I can see it, I can hold it, it's there from this moment to the next, and therefore was that the basis of it?
Yeah. 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 If there's inherent existent things, then duration is inherently existent, and vice versa. And
so it was a vehicle to support, that inherent view.
Yeah. And what this, whenever we're refuting inherent existence, you look at many different objects in many different ways and keep refuting from different angles and different things. Yeah. Okay.